Hello and welcome back to Jupiter in the 10th house, the series. We're up to episode 11. So we're going to be discussing Jupiter, specifically in Capricorn in the 10th house. And our example of a person with Jupiter in Capricorn in the 10th house is the famous astrological author, Linda Goodman. To start with, we should understand Jupiter in the 10th house, but that's what we already did in episode 1. So I'll put a link in the description below if you want to go and watch or rewatch that. For now, let me just summarize what we went over there. Jupiter in the 10th house signifies someone who is sage-like, transparent, and famous. Now we want to ask for similar information about Jupiter in Capricorn. I have done a whole video on Jupiter in Capricorn, so I'll put that link in the description below and you can research that further, get more of the details. For now, the summary of Jupiter in Capricorn is an odd way of evaluating unusual beliefs, impractical ideals, and fluctuations. Let's talk for a second about what these things mean. Odd evaluation is the result of a conflict between optimism and pessimism. Jupiter is optimistic and Capricorn is pessimistic. So Jupiter in Capricorn presents this dynamic where you flip between optimism and pessimism kind of unpredictably. So your evaluations are not very consistent. So you might be very harsh or demanding on evaluating one thing, but another thing you might just accept very easily. The unusual beliefs idea is something very similar. It's because of the clash between the trusting nature of Jupiter with the skeptical nature of Capricorn. So you're going to trust in things that you really maybe should have been skeptical about, and you're going to be skeptical about things that you really should have trusted. In practical ideals, it's a clash between the idealism of Jupiter and the practicality of Capricorn. And then the fluctuation of Jupiter in Capricorn is based on Jupiter being increased, but Capricorn being reduction. So there's big swings in prosperity. Now that we know this about Jupiter in Capricorn and Jupiter in the 10th house, we could go and figure out what Jupiter in Capricorn in the 10th house signifies. But before we do that, we'll get an even better result if we do one more step. If we know that Jupiter is in Capricorn in the 10th house, then we know that it's the 9th and the 12th lords in the 10th house. The 9th house is religious, the 12th house is spiritual, and the 10th house is very public. So if the Lord of religion and spirituality goes into a public place, it signifies somebody who is very open with their beliefs and their spirituality, very overt or extrovert. Another way of looking at this is that the 12th house is about poverty, but the 9th house is about fortune. So if you join the lords of poverty and fortune, put them out in the place of a lot of movement and win the 10th house, then you get a lot of fluctuations in your fortune. Now that we have these three sets of symbolisms, all pertaining to the situation of Jupiter in Capricorn in the 10th house, we can get a clear understanding of what this really signifies to have Jupiter in the 10th house. So the overt spirituality matches with the unusual beliefs of Jupiter in Capricorn, which has to do with the sage-likeness of Jupiter in the 10th house, to give an effect of somebody who is a strange sage. Jupiter in Capricorn is a sage, but a strange sage. So sage means somebody that really researches and learns about things. But what are they researching? They're researching unusual things because Jupiter in Capricorn has unusual beliefs with odd evaluations. And they're very overt about it. If we bring in this odd evaluations, similar concept into this thing, then we're also going to get the sense of somebody who's quite paradoxical. So what I mean is they don't mind, they're comfortable, they're used to the fluctuations in their optimism and pessimism. So they're used to having one idea that they accepted very easily, even though it doesn't make that much sense, next to another idea that they're not really accepting, even though it makes total sense. So, or they're used to having these paradoxes in believing things that might even contradict themselves, because they can turn off their skepticism and turn it back on in some other place. So Jupiter in Capricorn in the 10th house is kind of a strange sage that has a lot of paradoxes to them. And finally, there's a lot of fluctuation here because the lordship of 9 and 12 and 10 pretends a lot of fluctuation, and so does Jupiter in Capricorn. So we're going to expect wide changes in their status, wide changes in their financial status, abrupt changes in their moods, abrupt changes in what they're interested in or what they talk about, and so forth. For example, a person who is fairly well known with Jupiter and Capricorn in the 10th house is Linda Goodman. Who's Linda Goodman? She's probably still to this day the most successful, in terms of book sales, the most successful astrological author. Linda Goodman's sun signs, Linda Goodman's love signs, two really huge selling books. But this woman really is a good illustration of what we're talking about here. She's very into her spiritual thing, but her spiritual thing is very mix and match and very paradoxical mixing of New Age liberal things with very Catholic-y conservative things. And fluctuating fortunes indeed, ranging from being millionaire from book sales to being bankrupt. If we look specifically at her chart, we can find out pretty easily why she's so successful as an author. So first of all, her Jupiter in the 10th house is on the 10th house cusp, and that is never something you should ignore. The house cusp is so important. The house cusp in the whole sign system is the most sensitive part of the house, and it's always the same as the degree of the ascendant. So since her ascendant is at 22 degrees of Aries, the cusp of her 10th house is 22 degrees of the 10th sign from Aries, 22 degrees of Capricorn. And where is her Jupiter? It's at 21 degrees. So it's not just Jupiter in the 10th house, which pertains fame and success. It's Jupiter on the cusp of the 10th house in her case. So you take it more seriously. You can start out with that to get a kind of a hint that she's going to actually be successful as Jupiter in the 10th house can be. Then the next thing you would notice is that she has an exalted sun near her ascendant. Then you might notice that it is the 5th lord and that it has joined the 7th, which makes a Raja Yoga. The 5th house is a trine and the 7th house is an angle. So if the Lord in the 5th and the 7th join, you join the trine and the angle, you get a Raja Yoga. And it's in her first house, which is both a trine and an angle, and it's right close to the ascendant, which makes it very prominent. Raja Yoga is the key to interpreting success. Furthermore, this Raja Yoga of hers is opposite to her full moon. So that means that you get a mutual aspect between her 5th lord, the sun, and her 4th lord, the moon. And what that gives you, 5th and 4th, 4th is an angle, 5th is a trine. So what that gives you is the second Raja Yoga right on the ascendant and the descendant. So it's not just sun signs, but it's also love signs. So now you can, I think, see how you use the individual chart to fine-tune and refine and get specificity and confidence from a basic template, such as a template about what does Jupiter and Capricorn in the 10th house represent, which itself is a refinement of a more basic template, which is what does Jupiter in the 10th house represent. If you want to understand the whole context of your chart, the soil in which your interpretive seeds grow, then visit my website, vicdecara.com, and click Readings. My complete chart report explains each and every nook and cranny of your chart and will keep you occupied in self-discovery for years. I also have 2 groundbreaking new reports. The first of these, Your Nakshatra, organizes your active nakshatras in order of their importance to you and presents the fundamental interpretations for the planets that occupy them. The newest report, Star Strength, uses a system called Tarahabala to unfold 90 interpretations of the nuanced relationships between all the planets in your chart, which paints a rich and detailed picture of how your various strengths cooperate or compete with each other. Order these or any of my reports and accelerate your journey to deeper self-understanding.